Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am so thrilled to have you here today. If you're a focused learner looking to truly understand what makes you, and honestly, everyone else around you tick, well, you're in the exact right place. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the groundbreaking work of a pioneering psychologist named Raymond Cattell. We'll explore exactly how he took the vast, chaotic, and just wonderfully complex world of human personality and scientifically distilled it down into measurable building blocks. So let's jump right in.
Okay, let's dive into this. Is there a common structure to human personality? You know, that is the fundamental question that drove Cattell's entire body of work. For the longest time, personality was just something philosophers debated, right? It felt entirely subjective. Obviously, we all know people differ from one another. But Cattell, he didn't just want to accept that we're all these mysterious, unique snowflakes. No, he approached this as a rigorous scientific investigator. He deeply believed that underneath all the varied ways we act, think, and feel, there absolutely had to be a hidden framework, a common structure that all our differences are built upon. And, well, he was determined to find it.
Section 1, the Personality Structure Quest, Sifting Through the Language of Human Nature.
Now, think about the sheer scale of the challenge he was facing here. I mean, if you want to study cells, you look through a microscope. You want to study stars, you build a telescope. But how on earth do you scientifically quantify something as invisible, as complex as human behavior? Well, Cattell started his investigation by looking at language itself. Over centuries, we humans have developed words to describe practically every single facet of how people act and feel. If you just crack open a dictionary, you're going to find a huge array of descriptive adjectives, literally thousands of words. Things like outgoing, anxious, reliable, impulsive, warm, hostile, you name it. But this was a completely chaotic starting point. How do you find a scientific structure when you have thousands of overlapping adjectives? It's kind of like looking at a million puzzle pieces dumped on a table, but you don't have the picture on the box.
Section 2, Finding the Building Blocks, the Data Detective at Work.
So, to find some sort of order in this linguistic chaos, Cattell acted as a true data detective. He realized pretty quickly he couldn't just guess which words belonged together. He needed an objective mathematical tool. And that brings us to factor analysis. Now, don't let the term intimidate you. At its core, factor analysis is simply a statistical technique used to discover common structures within a massive array of data. Imagine you have that giant list of adjectives we just talked about. Factor analysis basically looks for correlations. For instance, if it notices that people who are described as sociable are almost always also described as talkative and friendly, the math tells us, hey, these aren't three entirely separate traits. They're actually just different expressions of one underlying structure, or factor. So Cattell used this technique to empirically strip away all that redundancy in our language. Let's move to and see how this builds, because his exact scientific methodology was a really rigorous step-by-step process. Step 1, he started with that massive, totally overwhelming list of descriptive adjectives found in our language. Step 2, he applied the heavy mathematical lifting of factor analysis to all that data. And finally, step 3, by crunching those numbers, he was able to discover the underlying common structure. He basically just let the data speak for itself, revealing the hidden patterns of human behavior without relying on any personal bias.
So the crucial point is 16. Out of all those thousands upon thousands of words in the English language used to describe human behavior, Cattell's exhaustive mathematical analysis distilled human personality down to exactly 16 primary traits. Just 16. I mean, this was a monumental breakthrough. It meant that the dizzying complexity of human nature could actually be mapped out using a specific, highly manageable set of foundational elements.
Section 3, Source versus Surface Traits, the core and the expression. And this brilliantly illustrates how this all actually works. Because having 16 traits isn't the end of the story. We have to explain how they function in everyday life to make us who we are. Think of it as a duality between source traits and surface traits. Source traits are those 16 primary discoveries. They're stable, and they're described in terms of opposing tendencies, kind of like a dial you can turn between being highly relaxed versus highly tense. These source traits are the true invisible building blocks of your personality. Then, on the other side, we have surface traits. These are the behaviors we actually observe in a person on a day-to-day basis. The big takeaway here is that surface traits are the result of the interaction of those hidden source traits. Just like invisible chemical elements combine to create the physical objects we see every day, your hidden source traits interact and combine to create the visible surface traits that people actually notice about you.
Section 4, the 16 PF questionnaire and real-world applications, moving from theory to practice. It's an incredibly elegant theory, right? But as we know, a theory is really only as good as its practical application. And Cattell wasn't content just leaving his 16 building blocks in some dusty academic paper. To actually measure them in living, breathing individuals, he developed the 16 Personality Factor Questionnaire, which is widely known as the 16PF. This is a specific self-report assessment tool. It provides individuals with declarative statements. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how incredibly useful this tool turned out to be in the real world. The 16PF isn't just a fun parlor trick. It has profound, actionable value. It's versatile enough to be used with both high school level students and adults. Because it accurately maps out those stable, underlying building blocks of who you are, it has been found to be extremely useful in career guidance and vocational exploration. By understanding an individual's core traits, professionals can utilize this occupational testing to help people find paths and work environments where they will naturally thrive, rather than just trying to force a square peg into a round hole based on superficial observations.
So we've seen how Raymond Cattell used data and math to find order in the chaos of human nature, proving that underneath our endless variety, there really is a common structure. So a question I want to leave you with today: if your personality was reduced to its 16 fundamental building blocks, what would your structure look like? Which opposing tendencies define your core, and how do they interact to create the surface traits the world sees every single day? Understanding this doesn't put you in a box. Rather, it gives you the blueprint to your own potential. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, stay focused, and I'll catch you next time.